I was born in Coral Gables, Florida, in Doctors Hospital, November 11th, 1951. Um, it's interesting, I'm my mom's first child, and I'm the middle child in the family. Because my parents tried for years to have kids, and they adopted 3, and then all of a sudden I show up on the scene. So, and then there was 4 more after me, so there's 7 Van Orsdel kids. It was a 6-bedroom house in Coral Gables, and I have 5 sisters. So, and 1 brother. And my brother went off to military school, so he wasn't around much. So I grew up, I had my own private bathroom because I was the only guy in the house. That was a real luxury. My father and grandfather had a bank in Iowa, and they saw the Depression coming, so they sold the bank and ended up in Miami. They were either going to go to Florida or California, ended up in Miami, and they partnered with a funeral home in downtown Miami called Good Funeral Home, G-O-O-D Funeral Home. And it was Good-Van Orsdel, the first funeral home, Good Van Orsdel. So, and then it expanded from there, and at the height of Van Orsdel, we had 7 locations. 7 locations. I went to West Laboratory Elementary School. I went to Ponce de Leon Junior High School, and I went to Coral Gables Senior High School, graduated in 1969. Well, it was, the school was a very small school, so a lot of private attention, and went to a lot of birthday parties. We lived near a pool in Coral Gables, Venetian pool, went to hang out there some, and my parents got me tennis lessons, and then we spent the summer in the Smoky Mountains in North Carolina. Well, I mean, even in junior high school, I would go to the funeral home after school, and even before I could drive, they would drop me off there and pick me up. And sometimes I'd be doing my homework back in the bedroom with my parents and at their little desk, and they'd call and say, "Oh, can we pick up Don and take him to help pick up a body?" And I would, they'd come by the house and pick me up, and I'd go. And I grew up pretty much, I mean, my whole childhood was working at the funeral home, and I had a lot of friends at school, went to a lot of birthday parties, but it wasn't like, I had a few people come over and have sleepovers, with friends, but basically a lot of it was being at the funeral home, big part. But I would mow the lawns at the funeral home, I would wash the hearses, I would do all the stuff, and then I spent a lot of time with my parents. I was very close to my parents. We'd go out to eat. After church on Sundays, we'd go to the cafeteria and have lunch, and we'd go to, pick up burgers on Sunday night after, and I did lawns and a lot. I really liked to work. I was a good worker. Well, my father, interestingly enough, never really told me, "Oh, Don, we'd love for you to go in the family business. We'd love for you to do that." He left it totally up to me, which I really thought was really neat. And in high school, I went back to his bedroom, and I remember sitting there and saying, "Dad, I think I'd like to go to funeral service school," when I graduated from Gables High. And he said, "I think that'd be a great idea." So that was the only thing he ever said, was he gave me that encouragement, but he didn't push me. And I went right from Coral Gables High School right to Miami-Dade and got a 2-year degree and an associate degree in mortuary and funeral service. They called it back then mortuary science. I was too young to take the state boards in Florida, so I even asked them at the state level if they could just let me take the test and hold my license back till I was 21. They said no, so I had to wait till 21. In the meantime, I went to University of Miami and got a degree in business. From Miami-Dade with a business degree. Well, no, I went to Miami-Dade and got the funeral service degree, and then I went to University of Miami, got the business degree, and spent a lot, like I said, my whole life has been the funeral homes. Right now is my 50th year on the payroll. I started when I was 16 on the payroll. They pinned my check on the bulletin board, and I made $1.65 an hour. My father didn't spoil me at all. He wanted me to, learn the value of work and everything. And I worked my way up. And I worked around my father's managers who've been with him 30, 40, 45 years, and just long-time people. They were experts at helping people, and licensed funeral directors, of course, and they were involved in the community and all the civic clubs and churches, and just a tremendous example. And my dad and he and I were like glue. We were always together, and we went out to lunch together, went to the University of Miami football games together, went to church together. And I asked him, I probably pounded him with questions, like thousands of questions. And I learned all this from him, he just taught me tremendous. And then I hung around all these longtime managers at the funeral home, and I learned even more. So I'm like the walking encyclopedia of the funeral service in Miami, even though I'm only 65 years old. So. Well, I spent a lot of time in my younger years at our downtown location in Midtown Miami. I had an office by the front door there, and my father's general manager went home from work one day and had a massive heart attack and died in 1978. And at a young age, I took over as the general manager of the company, so that thrust me way up into a lot of responsibility. But he had been with my father 32 years, and my father he didn't want to put me above him. But then I had that opportunity, and it was at a young age, and I learned a lot. And I wanted to computerize the payroll and make a lot of changes that my father's general manager was more old school and old fashioned. He didn't want to change anything. So I was making a lot of changes. And I was with a lot of these long-time people. Most of the people around me at the funeral home were older funeral directors. And I was there for about 20 years, and then later I worked a lot when I was younger at the Coral Gables Chapel too, because that's where we lived. So the largest funeral home was at the Gables, but the central office where we did all the embalming and preparation and our crematories and everything were at the downtown location. I always was at the church, and then I rededicated my life to Christ in 1974 at Granada Presbyterian Church in the Gables. And I taught junior high Sunday school. I drove the church bus. I taught with one of the pastor's wives in junior high Sunday school. And that was a challenge, because I know when I first started, and all these junior high kids were there, and they were lawyers' sons and doctors' sons. And I tried to teach them, and they ran over the top of me. They wouldn't sit still. They were these little junior high kids that were wild. And finally I put my foot down and I took charge, And then a couple friends of mine at Granada Presbyterian decided that they would go to University Baptist because there was this big new singles group there. And I went over there and I visited it, and it was unbelievable. And it was so big, and tons of singles and people that I knew. So I ended up going over to University Baptist and ended up going all the way to the top of the Singles 1 group, they called it, and was the director of Singles 1. I was in the singles group there for about 20 years, and at the height of the group there, it had like 150, 200 members. So it was a big, big thing. They've asked me a number of times to be a deacon, but in the funeral business, I'm like a doctor on call, and I can't commit to too many things. I tend to be very consistent. When my father died, he had 55 years perfect attendance in Kiwanis. I stopped at 26 years perfect attendance in Rotary International. That means I had to go 52 weeks a year and get perfect attendance. And so I stopped because it was getting to be extremely hard, but I'm tried to do a lot of things like my dad very consistently. And then my wife, we met at our church in the Coral Gables. It's been a major part of my life. We met in the last pew in the last row at the church. One Sunday I saw her there, and I heard she got married. Well, she hadn't, and I met her there, and it was love at first sight. I'd already seen her in the singles group, and I didn't think she was single anymore, but I found out she was. We went to lunch I'm trying to think. I think we went to Fridays, and we went to lunch, and she comes from a very traditional Cuban family, so her mom came with us. So it was a three-part lunch, and but I was just so attracted to her. I had, been single for a long time, and so I was swept off my feet. We started dating. We would get on the phone and talk for like an hour at a time, and it would go by like 5 minutes, and you knew that was a good sign. And then I kept showering her with flowers, go by the florist that did the funeral home flowers and pick up a dozen roses and take them over there. And I loaded her with flowers. I mean, just loaded them, and cards and everything. And so that was, and now we've been married 30 years. And we got married there, and the limousine for the wedding was a funeral home employee driving a funeral home limousine. So that was, I had the luxury of having my own limousine, so we used one of them. So what am I going to do? I used even an employee too. And we had the reception there at church, and so because it was at the church and because it was 30 years ago, we couldn't dance and we couldn't drink. So none of that was there. But we had some nice music and a sit-down dinner, and it was really nice. And went off to the Hawaii for the honeymoon. So that was really nice. I've traveled quite a bit. Growing up, I would travel. I've been to LA a couple of times, Chicago, Boston, New Orleans 3 times, Dallas, and all because of funeral directors' annual conventions, all for funeral directors' meetings. since then, since I got married, and we'd always spend the summer in North Carolina in the mountains. And my parents finally bought a home in Lake Junaluska, which is the Methodist retreat grounds for the Southeast United States. It's up near Asheville in the mountains. And I love going up there. We now have that home, and we go up there. But after I got married, we went on a couple cruises. We went on a Northern European and a Southern European cruise. Both of those excellent cruises with our family. I have 3 daughters. So I grew up with 5 sisters, and I have 3 daughters. I've been around women my whole life. It's a rough life, but somebody has to do it, you know. But so I have a big insight into women. Well, I have 3 daughters: Ivana, 24, Katrina, 27, and Crystal, 29. And Crystal is now a licensed funeral director, graduated summa cum laude from FIU and the Honors College at FIU, and with a degree in international business. And got married a couple months before she graduated. So she's very, very smart. Speaks 3 languages. In charge of our website, accounting, a whole list of things, assistant vice president of the company. Katrina is the middle daughter. She got a degree from FIU also in nutrition. Didn't find it was what she had hoped it would be, and went back and did a fast-track nursing degree. She became a registered nurse, and she now is working at the surgical center in Miami, earning really good money. And so she made a good decision there. Ivana's the youngest one. She just is the first one in the family to get a master's degree in hospitality from FIU also. Just graduated about 3 or 4 weeks ago. And she is now running our flower shop for a few. We have an in-house flower shop here at the Kendall location. Well, I'm very proud that I met Maria, and that we have these 3 amazing girls. And I have 2 grandchildren now. Well, I'm hoping and praying that my daughter Crystal will be very successful with the family business in the future, and that I know Ivana wants to find the right guy and get married and have kids, and I hope that will happen. And Katrina is doing really good, and I hope she'll continue to do good. And I just hope the funeral homes will continue their legacy, and that my daughters will continue in the Christian tradition of the family.